My name is Sadiq Abubakar, the National Youth Coordinator for the United African Congress. My question is basically an internal question on the continent of Africa. The World Trade Organization policies towards the developing countries has been very unfair. At this point in the world financial turmoil, isn't it very good and wise for them to reassess the way they approach developing countries and ease some of the tight loops that is preventing the developing countries from moving ahead in their development?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Lincoln Ajoko. I'm a SIPA graduate, and I'm the former president of the SIPA Pan-African Network. My question was, you did some quite remarkable work as the finance minister in Nigeria in terms of significantly reducing the debt. And the question now is, for countries that have gone through HIPIC or have had significant debt reduction, now facing revenue falls, now facing depreciation of currency, what sort of strategies are you advising so that they can avoid falling into the debt trap again? Thank you.
Last question. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Christine Nana, and I'm originally from Kenya. And my question is for the, here I am. My question is in relation to countries that are not, African countries that really are not dependent on the extractive industry, for example, Kenya. Often we talk about African economies and immediately assume it's a mining country. What would you say is the strategy that they should take for wealth creation and job creation?
I think if these answers were easier, countries would be well underway. But I'll give you my thoughts. On the issue of the question of how do I cope with the World Bank being, people saying it's being used as a neoliberal, I cope well. Because I don't feel defensive about the World Bank at all. I mean, I think the World Bank is an institution that is made up of people, has a certain, yes, if you want to call it market ideology behind it, which has its faults and its problems. And it has made mistakes in countries, but those countries have also made mistakes alongside. And I think the important thing to me as an individual, why I feel able to say very clearly and proudly that I work at the bank, and before I became finance minister, I made my career there, is that the bank has a mechanism for trying to correct its mistakes. There are not too many institutions, even NGOs. I always ask NGOs that have a branch of their organization whose job it is to continuously monitor every project and say what has gone wrong. And what has been done wrong and how it should be corrected. We have an evaluation group called the IEG that does that. And of course, it's not liked within the bank. Nobody likes it because it doesn't even report to the president. So you cannot control what they do. They report to the board. And so they come up, and the reason why people are so able to criticize the bank is because all they do is get hold of those IEG reports. If we didn't do that, no one would know. You would just hear that mistakes were made here and there, but you have no documentation. And I think it is a very good discipline. I'm for it, and it keeps the place honest. So that's one of the reasons I can say yes, that, this is an institution that does that. And I also have seen the institution evolve and have helped to generate that. If you think something is not going right, I don't think you should just complain about it. You should try and do something. That's why I also went home. Every individual can make a difference. I strongly believe in that. Don't sit there and say, oh, little old me, I can do nothing. There are all those leaders there, what can I do? They won't let me. If they won't let you do something at the aggregate level, you can do something that makes a difference in your village, in your community. everywhere. The same thing at the World Bank. I felt, well, it's just little old me, an African woman. Maybe nobody will listen, but maybe somebody will. You know, and so within the organizations too, you know, one began to point out that, look, maybe the way we are doing some of the African countries may not be quite the right way. Maybe we don't have all the knowledge. Maybe our countries are more complex than people think. Because you cannot just come from outside and then go into a country and think you have all the answers to make a project work. We have to send people to live in those countries. And I mean even Africans, some of you and us and me, we are just living in the city. We are part of the elite. So just because you're African doesn't mean you know what's happening in the village. Even you will need to go and live in that village to find out what's going on. So we began to make those kinds of arguments. Let's send more people. So the bank is almost 40% decentralized today. Many people don't know it. We have the staff living in the countries, and we intend to massively push more and more people to the field so they can be next to the client they're trying to serve. So those kinds of things, I'm proud to have had a part to do with it. You know, and I pushed myself, working hard. The higher up you get, sometimes the more you get listened to. And that helped. So that's one thing. But I want to take a minute on this issue of what can I as an individual do? You can do a lot. If you're not within government, start a civil society organization that looks at what government does. And be brave enough to put it out there as information. And maybe you think nobody is listening, but it will make a difference. Many of our countries don't even have opinion polls. Nobody knows what the population thinks. And sometimes when they vote, nobody counts their votes. That's why I said democracy, more or less. Because sometimes it's less and sometimes it's more. Like Ghana, I'm very proud of Ghana because look at the incredible thing Ghana did. Isn't that wonderful? You know? So when I left government, I didn't just run back to the bank. I said, well, what are the gaps I saw when I was in government? One was people who come and tell me, oh, these policies, they are anti-people, they don't like it, you know, you're neo-colonialist and all that. And I said, how do you know? Did you poll people? Is it these polls that our newspapers do that are not scientific? And then they tell you that 60%, and they read it too, you know. They go back and do something, and then they get the answer they want. And it really frustrated me. So when I left, they said, come back to the World Bank. I said, no, I'm not sure I want to. I started an opinion research organization with Gallup. I got Gallup to partner with little or no money. And today it is doing polls. They just did a poll, and I'm no longer involved because of my job, but they are running it. Young people like you, they just did a poll to see what the Nigerians think about the economic crisis, which will be published on Tuesday. Isn't that something? You put it out there, then the poll, they sent me the early results. 53% of the people say it's impacting them through the food prices, and the majority think the government is not doing the right thing. Only 33% said, well, government is trying. The rest said government is not. If you put that out there, it's staring the government in the face, and they can look at it. So it's just to illustrate to you that if I leave here today, having convinced even one of you that you can make a difference wherever you are, that's very important to me. Now, there's a question on WTO. Yes, I do agree. I mean, it's one of the saddest things about this globalization that we're in now is the fact that the Doha trade round failed, and that the developed countries, along with some emerging markets, have not been able to come to agreement that would enable this quote-unquote development round to benefit the poorer countries. It's a big disappointment that people cannot agree to phase out the subsidies. They need to phase out $1 billion a day in agricultural subsidies from the developed countries. $1 billion. The total at the end of the year is almost equal to Africa's own GDP. So agreeing on issues, but here the farm lobby finds it very difficult for the US to agree. In Europe, the same problem. India has some issues.